If you walked through the streets of Miami in the middle of the 1970s, you would have noticed something that didn't make sense. The luxury stores weren't filled with American executives or European aristocrats. They weren't crowded with Arab oil sheiks or Hollywood celebrities. They were filled with Venezuelans. Loud, confident, laughing Venezuelans moving through Miami like they owned the city. They arrived in large groups, entire families traveling together, parents, cousins, children, all dressed sharply, all carrying cash. They didn't browse, they didn't compare prices, they didn't hesitate. When they liked something, they bought it, and when they bought it, they bought two, one for themselves and one just in case. The shop owners had a name for them. They called them the Dame Dos crowd. Give me two. Two watches, two televisions, two pairs of Italian shoes, two luxury cars. Miami became their playground, their shopping mall, their second home. And at the center of it all was oil money, flowing faster than anyone understood and disappearing faster than anyone imagined. To Americans living through inflation, gas shortages, and economic anxiety, this behavior felt unreal. It looked like wealth without limits. But for Venezuelans, this wasn't excess, it was normal. Because back home, money felt infinite. Gasoline cost less than water. Imported whiskey was cheaper than domestic milk. Dollars were easy to get, easy to spend, and impossible to imagine running out. Venezuela believed it had escaped the rules of economics. It believed oil had rewritten reality, and Miami was just one of the places where that illusion came to life.
At the same time Miami was transforming, Caracas was becoming something even more dramatic. The skyline rose almost overnight. Construction cranes filled the horizon. Glass towers replaced colonial buildings. Neon lights turned the city into a permanent celebration. Luxury restaurants served food flown in daily from Europe and the United States. Fashion from Milan and Paris arrived before it reached New York. The Concorde, the fastest and most exclusive passenger jet in the world, landed regularly in Caracas. You could have breakfast in Paris and lunch in Venezuela. Whiskey flowed freely. Scotch, aged longer than most Venezuelans had been alive, was consumed like water. To the outside world, Venezuela looked like a miracle, a developing country that had somehow skipped the struggle and gone straight to abundance. But miracles in economics don't exist, only incentives, systems, and consequences. And the system Venezuela had entered was far larger and far more dangerous than anyone realized. The turning point came in 1973, thousands of miles away. The Yom Kippur War erupted in the Middle East, and Arab oil-producing nations responded by cutting oil supplies to Western countries that supported Israel. Oil prices didn't slowly increase, they exploded, from $3 a barrel to $12 almost overnight. It was one of the largest wealth transfers in human history. Industrial nations bled money. Oil producers drowned in it. Venezuela, a founding member of OPEC, suddenly found itself sitting on rivers of cash. The irony is that Venezuela had been warned. Years earlier, one of the architects of OPEC, a Venezuelan named Juan Pablo Pérez Alfonso, had called oil the devil's excrement. He warned that oil wealth didn't create development, it destroyed it. That easy money would rot institutions, reward corruption, and turn nations into addicts. But in the mid-1970s, no one wanted to hear warnings. They wanted champagne, imported cars, and shopping trips to Miami. When Carlos Andrés Pérez became president in 1974, oil money was pouring into the country faster than the government could count it. The treasury overflowed. The central bank didn't have enough vaults to store reserves. Dollar bills were stacked in hallways. Pérez believed this money could transform Venezuela into a first-world nation within a decade. He spoke of greatness, modernization, and destiny. He nationalized the oil industry. He launched massive infrastructure projects. He sent tens of thousands of students abroad on government scholarships. Children of taxi drivers studied at Harvard and Oxford. For a brief moment, it looked like the dream was working. But beneath the surface, the economy was quietly being poisoned. When oil dollars flooded Venezuela, the local currency became incredibly strong. Imports became cheap. Domestic production became uncompetitive. Why farm when food from Iowa cost less? Why manufacture shoes when Italian brands undercut local factories? Venezuelan agriculture collapsed. Factories closed. The country stopped producing and started consuming. Everything was imported, even sand for construction. Oil money made buying easy and making pointless. This phenomenon had a name: Dutch disease. It affects countries that rely too heavily on a single resource. The resource makes the currency strong, but the economy weak. Venezuela fell into this trap completely. But an even more dangerous force was at work behind the scenes. Oil money didn't just stay in Venezuela. It flowed into global banks, and banks don't make money by holding cash. They make money by lending it. Wall Street and London were suddenly flooded with deposits from oil-producing countries. But the U.S. economy was struggling. American businesses weren't borrowing. So the banks looked elsewhere. They looked south. They looked at Venezuela and saw the perfect borrower. Stable democracy, massive oil reserves, guaranteed future income.
Bankers didn't wait for Venezuela to ask for loans. They flew in on private jets. They stayed in luxury hotels. They pitched loans as free money. Oil prices would rise forever, they said. Inflation would erase debt. Borrow now, grow fast, pay later. And the loans came with floating interest rates, a detail no one in Caracas paid attention to. At the time, interest rates were low. The party continued. Venezuela borrowed billions to fund infrastructure, to subsidize imports, to cover corruption. Contracts went to friends. Ghost companies appeared. A small circle of businessmen became unimaginably wealthy simply by being close to power. The state grew massive. Bureaucracies multiplied. Jobs existed without purpose. The government became the employer of last resort. The state replaced productivity. By the end of the 1970s, Venezuela had one of the highest levels of per capita debt in the world. A country swimming in oil money was borrowing aggressively. It was recycling its own wealth through global banks and paying interest for the privilege. It was a shell game, and the house always wins. Then the music stopped. In the United States, inflation spiraled out of control. To stop it, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates aggressively. By the early 1980s, rates hit levels no one had seen before. For Venezuela, this was catastrophic. Those floating rate loans suddenly became crushing. Interest payments doubled and tripled. At the same time, oil prices softened, supply increased, demand slowed. The perfect storm arrived. The government tried to maintain the illusion. It burned through reserves to defend the currency. It kept the exchange rate fixed. It wanted Venezuelans to keep flying to Miami, to keep drinking scotch, to keep believing the dream. But mathematics doesn't care about illusions. Dollars drained from the country. Wealthy Venezuelans moved money abroad. Capital flight accelerated. The people who benefited most from the boom were the first to leave. On February 18, 1983, the illusion collapsed. The government devalued the currency. The exchange rate that symbolized stability vanished overnight. Savings were destroyed. Debt exploded. The middle class woke up poorer. Students abroad were cut off. Businesses collapsed. The Dame Dos era ended in silence. The 1980s became a lost decade. Venezuela couldn't borrow anymore. Banks turned aggressive. Loans were refinanced with conditions. Spending was cut. Subsidies shrank. Infrastructure decayed. Roads cracked. Hospitals ran out of medicine. Schools deteriorated. The great Venezuela crumbled slowly and painfully. By the late 1980s, desperation set in. Carlos Andrés Pérez returned to power on nostalgia. People believed he could bring back abundance. But when he took office again, the treasury was empty. He turned to the IMF. The bailout came with conditions.
Prices were liberalized, state companies were privatized, gasoline subsidies were cut. For Venezuelans, cheap gas wasn't an economic policy, it was an identity. When gas prices rose in 1989, the reaction was immediate. Transportation costs spiked, protests erupted, riots spread, Caracas burned. People looted stores, not out of greed, but out of rage. Soldiers were deployed, shots were fired, hundreds, possibly thousands died. The event shattered faith in democracy. The social contract collapsed. Out of that chaos emerged resentment toward politicians, toward banks, toward capitalism itself. People believed their wealth had been stolen by foreign interests and local elites, and into that anger stepped a young military officer named Hugo Chavez. He spoke of betrayal, oil, and justice. He promised to reclaim what was lost. He didn't create the anger, he inherited it. The truth is simple and brutal. Oil money is not wealth. Productivity is. Institutions are. Discipline is. Venezuela had money, but it never built the systems needed to manage it. Miami stands today as a monument to that illusion, a city partially shaped by money that vanished as quickly as it arrived. The banks were paid, the elites escaped, and the people were left with the bill. And the most dangerous part is this: the system that trapped Venezuela never disappeared. It only changed addresses. So the question isn't whether this story is over. The question is, who's next?